Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to The Unlearning Playground, an everyday life podcast by Chetan Narang. I want to start this episode with a thought experiment. Consider that you have a pot of ink in your hands. Consider that there is an empty wall in front of you, and consider that you have been permitted by the owner of the wall to smear the ink all over the place. Consider that you actually do it. You smash that ink pot all over the wall, and now, ignoring the bits of glass, there is ink all over the place. Now, I want you to consider that drop of ink in that far off corner of the wall. Looked at in isolation, that drop is just a tiny drop of ink. And you're right, it is a single drop in a million billion others. But what I want you to acknowledge is the fact that it is the ink. It is as much the ink as any other ink there is or ever was in the original ink pot. It is the ink. Its real nature is that it is the ink. Now, if that drop of ink was to become, let's say, conscious of its existence, I'm just stretching the example a bit more, I would say that that drop would not even realize that it is a drop of ink, a drop of the ink. I think it would be so consumed with the drama surrounding its limited field of view that that is the only thing it would be conscious of. Let's stretch it. I think it would be conscious of the lizard and the ants coming all over and stamping all over it. The drops next to it being hard to get along with. The fear of the darkness when the lights are turned off. And the beauty of the bright sunlight when the curtains are opened up. The shame of being a bad drop deep down in its heart. And the fear of being miserable in the future. All of this immediate drama would completely consume the everyday life of the conscious drop. This is the human condition. Each and every one of us is just like that drop of ink, consumed by the drama of our everyday lives, which shields our very true, our very basic nature. We are the ink that did all the dance on the wall and is continuing on with the dance as we speak. We are the ink. We are the dance. Each of us. I sincerely hope you're able to draw the parallels I'm trying to make here. In the previous episode, we covered the idea of one's ego, one's sense of self, one's sense of I. I as in the letter I, not the organ I. And we discussed there that the real nature of the I gets lost in identification with the illusion produced by the myriad different thoughts, the myriad different feelings, sensations, emotions going on through our organism all the livelong day. What is the real nature of this I? I just told you above. Do you remember the separation fallacy episode, which was the second episode of this show? If not, I would highly recommend you to go through that. We covered in that episode how connected we are to the universe, to everything there is. And that is the point I'm trying to make here. Let me build on this a bit more. So, let's assume you are a 24-year-old girl named Ria, who is working as a lawyer in some company in some city in India. Let's ask Ria who she really is. She gives us the common answer. I am Ria, I studied at so and now I work at so. You get the picture, right? But oh, we are smarter than that now. So we ask her that that's just a bunch of things that she's done in the past, she's looking to do in the future. What is she really? Fundamentally. You see, if she would have chosen a different career, or a different career would have been chosen for her, would she be someone or something else? Or would that have been just another role the real she would have taken up? Like the numerous others she already plays. Daughter, friend, partner, lawyer, Indian, etc. Who is this constant she really? If we could get to that, maybe we could get to the bottom of the seemingly bottomless pit after all. Let's try probing further. So she's playing the role of a 24-year-old lawyer right now, but maybe sufficient backtracking would help us uncover the constant she that is behind all of this all the time. So, what was she a few years ago? A student somewhere, perhaps? And before that, a little girl playing in the schoolyard, maybe. And before that, a newborn baby. And before that, this is where it gets interesting, isn't it? Because before that, it's almost as if we can imagine that she was asleep and even she does not remember the dream she was dreaming. You may question if she even existed before she was born. And it's a perfectly valid question because in our day to day lives, we experience ourselves in our bodies. We identify with the body, and it'll be very normal to say that I am nothing but my body, and my idea of myself is also a part of my body. And you're right. But if you take that idea deeper, I think Alan Watts was the one who used to say it in these words that if this idea is taken deeper, you would hit upon the idea that you started in a maternity ward somewhere and will end up in a crematorium somewhere or be burnt up basis those who survived you. And that your life is just something that happens between these two events. I do not deny this idea, but the right adjective I have for it is that it is incomplete. You see, if you're nothing but your body, you are an accumulation, right? And that is what your body is, isn't it? You were a little baby just a few years ago, and you've accumulated so much since. But you see, if that was true, and you were nothing but an accumulation, you would have to start somewhere, right? An accumulation has to start somewhere, out of something. So, where and when did your accumulation start? At the time of your birth? No, you know you existed before that too, when you spent those comfortable months in your mother's comfortable womb, sleeping with not a worry in the world. So, when did you start? We're back where we left, aren't we? The question of what you were before you were born. I think the most reasonable answer to that is that you existed in some form in your parents. Call this form genes, call this form chromosomes, call it what you want, provided you don't confuse the word for the thing. You existed in some form in your parents before you were born. Right, so where does that lead us? If you existed in some form in your parents before you were born, the same applies to your parents too. They existed in some form in your grandparents, which essentially means that you existed in some form in your grandparents. So you keep taking this recursion back as you can. And when I say as far back as you can, I mean take it all the way back to the very beginning, the very origin of everything. Whatever you can picture in your mind. Call it the Big Bang, if you will. And where that leads us is to a visualization that everyone, or rather everything, came from and is in fact the same thing. Now, relate this to the example of the ink pot we talked about in the very beginning of this episode. This thing which we just reached, which is what every other thing is at its very core, is the ink from that example. And every drop of the ink, though separated from the whole collection of ink now, is nonetheless the ink, no matter how overwhelmed it is by its everyday drama. And this thing is the real incorruptible definition of the word God. Well, as incorruptible as I can manage in words right now in this narration. And we are each of us. It's not out there somewhere way up in the sky or sometime way down in the future. It is here, every moment in the present now. If we would only unlearn the attachments to the drama of our everyday lives, we would see this as probably the most important truth, objective truth of our lives. The Advaita Vedanta, which is considered as the pinnacle of wisdom in all of Eastern philosophy and religion, has this as the central message. Advaita means non-dual, and non-dual literally means that which has no other, that which excludes nothing, that which includes everything, that which is one with everything, that which is the ink we just talked about, that which is the thing we just talked about. That is what God is, and that is what you are, that is what I am, or rather, that is what each of our eyes actually is. Again, I as in the letter I, not the organ I. In our everyday lives, our I is completely consumed by the whirlpool of thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions, and we identify with this whirlpool all the time. This whirlpool is our usual everyday ego, our usual everyday sense of who I am, what it means to be me, etc. And it is an important part of our lives. This I is how we navigate through the world, how we find out what's important for us, what to care about, what to be fearful of, etc. It is the lens through which we see the world, in and around us. It is our consciousness. But like every other lens, it has its limitations. It has its blind spots. It can only let in a limited amount of the light. And what we're talking about here is the deepest blind spot our lenses have. You see, human consciousness, while it is a beautiful process that allows the human organism to make sense of its environment, it's also a limiting process. It is, in its very nature, to ignore certain aspects of our reality and leave them out of the picture. And what we're talking about here is the deepest aspect that is left out by our everyday human consciousness. Just like that ink drop, if conscious, would not see much else apart from its everyday drama, the human organism doesn't see much else apart from its own everyday ego and the story built in its head around it. If you tuned in to the third episode of this podcast, I titled it God the Creator Fallacy. Is there a creator? In that episode, I was dispelling a very common misinterpretation, and I was talking about how, for most people, the word God equals creator. This is a misinterpretation, but it's also funny how seriously close to the truth it is, too. I mean, look at it from the lens of the talk we just had right now. That thing we just talked about, that ink, that non dual thing, is God. And that thing is also the creator of every other thing, right? I just told you that everything is that thing, everything spawns from that thing. And in that sense, we are right to say that God is the creator. But where the common interpretation diverges from the truth is that we separate the creator from the created. We start to imagine that the creator is someone out there somewhere who has created all of this and is now far away from everything he created, which is simply not true. So, more than understanding God as the creator, I would say it's better to understand God as the creative principle, the creative process, which is abundantly present every time, everywhere. In fact, that is all there is. To give you an example, you create all the time. You grow your hair, you grow your nails. Most of us can even create more human beings like us. The plants around us create leaves, create flowers, create more plants, etc. etc. And such is true for all the animals around you. We are all the creator, and at the same time, we are also the created. Now, whatever I'm sharing here is not an argument from authority. I am not asking you to believe any of it. This is merely an invitation to contemplate on it. That is how, after all of this came to me too. It is not my truth, it is an objective truth. It is what human beings' search for completeness and freedom and liberation has always been about. It is what religions have always been about. Well, I would not be so naive as to say that all religions have been about this always, but deep down, A lot of the religions have this as the heart of their messages, as the heart of their teachings. The Hindus, when they said Tattvam Asi, literally meant you are it. When they said Aham Brahmasmi, it quite literally meant I am Brahma or I am God. When the Sikhs said Ik Onkar Satnam, they meant that one thing created everything and its name is the truth. When the Buddhists said be one with everything, this is what they meant. Yoga literally means union, union of the self, the little I, with the supreme self, the universal consciousness. Union. When the Jains talk about the liberation of the soul, or rather, when all the Eastern religions talk about the liberation of the soul, or moksha, or enlightenment, or nirvana, they refer to this realization. The Atma is equal to the Paramatma. The small self, our little ego, our I, is actually the Supreme Self, is actually the universal consciousness, is actually God. And I haven't studied many Western religions, but I'm given to understand by many philosophers who have that this oneness is also at the core of the teaching of Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad. But alas, the core of the human condition is that we can translate whatever we hear into our own familiar language. And it doesn't take much effort for us to start believing that our translation is what was said in the first place. You can see that translation happening in you if you are very silent, if you are very still. If you have never come across what I just talked about in this episode, chances are that your brain right now is trying to appropriate my words into a narrative that fits into the one it already has. About your God, about your religion, etc. Catch it in this action. You cannot stop it. You can never stop it. But you can become aware of it. And once you become aware of it, you know not to act on the thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions powered by the false narratives. This is what I've always meant by unlearning. Unlearn your previous story in the sense of becoming aware of it. Slowly but surely, in this manner, the truth appears to you. Just like you have no control over the false thoughts popping up in your head, you cannot force yourself to see the truth. You can only see your ego in action when you fear facing the truth, when you translate it into, nothing new. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from this poet David Whyte, and he said, "Honesty is not found in revealing the truth, but rather in understanding how deeply afraid of it we are." If all of what I talked about here was your first time hearing it, make sure you listen to it again. I would recommend coupling it with episodes 2, 3 and 4 of the show as well. It would not take you more than an hour. And then contemplate on them. And then re-listen. And then contemplate again, no matter how long it takes. Because this is important. For the bigger picture to rise in you, the smaller one must be unlearned. And the awareness that there is a bigger picture is sometimes enough for that job. You now know that there is a bigger picture. Thank you for spending these past few minutes with me here. If what you just heard resonated with you, make sure you share it with others in your community too, to help spread the word far and wide. Also, a reminder that all of these episodes are also available on YouTube in the form of videos with embedded subtitles. So if you're one of those people who prefer listening and reading instead of only listening, you know where to go. I'll add the link to the YouTube channel in the description of this episode. Do check it out, like, share and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on YouTube already, the like, share and subscribe part is for you too. Until next time, peace out.